And I kept trying and trying. And it took me about 11 months until finally I was successful in becoming lucid within a dream. I was pulled back into my bed with my eyes closed. But this time, with my eyes closed, I saw this connection. It was almost like a camera feed. It lasted about 30 seconds and then it just pixelated and disappeared. I learned over time that was a portal. I've been having those for over 35 years. I didn't have one, I didn't have 10. I had hundreds and hundreds of them over a period of about 35 years is how long I've been having them. Probably, I don't know, 600 or 700 probably. And I've never once been to the same place twice.
Still have questions? Well, join me live for Wake Up Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll answer your questions, and you might see a familiar face. Together, we're waking up the collective. Thank you for watching. My guest today is Mike Martin, who learned in 11 months how to have a lucid dream where he could leave his body and have an experience on the other side. But since then, he has discovered how to access portals to other dimensions. And he thinks that this is something that with enough time and dedication that you could learn how to do. So I think you're going to want to stay tuned to hear what he has to say. So Mike, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So this is really an interesting topic. And I heard you say that when we were talking before we started this interview, that this is something that you access. This lucid dreaming is something you accessed when you were a kid. When I was in 8th grade, I was given a thesis to write where I had to go find evidence to make a case whether something existed. And I picked in 8th grade lucid dreaming. And my conclusion was that it was real. So I've been aware of this since I was probably 13 years old. And I've tried over time, not super consistently, to have these lucid dreams, and I've never been able to make it work. So will you tell everybody what the lucid dreams are and what you did in that 11 months to be able to have your first lucid dream?
Well, lucid dreaming, first of all, is being just as awake as you are right now in your physical life. If you're completely awake and you're doing something that interests you, you're alive and awake. That same level of understanding, that same level of awakening is introduced into the dream state. Now, the dream state is, we have different states of mind. You know, you've got your, at the times when you're driving in the car and you kind of go out of it and your subconscious takes over and you're just there, but you don't really pay attention to what's going on. Your motor skills are being utilized, but you're just not paying attention. You know, you can do that during the day, but during the dream state, usually we're in another state of mind where our consciousness is way back here and your subconsciousness is living this life in like a movie, a play or something. So, but you're just sitting here watching things. Well, lucid dreaming brings you right up to the front. You're now running the dream. So you're aware of the dream. And the way that I was able to become successful at it is by first doing a dream log. I had been doing a dream log for about 3 years before I started the lucid dreaming. What I was trying to do is trying to find out if there was anything in my dreams that I could use, you know, to my benefit, I could learn from. So I started by telling myself before I went to bed, I wanted to remember my dreams. And then slowly but surely, I started remembering. I'd wake up in the middle of the night. I had a book next to my bed, and I'd write down a couple key words out of the dream. And then that way, when I woke up in the morning, those key words would trigger the memory of the dream, and I could write it down. Well, next thing you know, I get up in the morning, and I have 5 or 6 dream key words written down. So I'd write each dream down exactly as I remembered it, and I kept them in my journal. Then after some time, you know, every couple months, I would go through the dreams to see if there was anything that I could utilize out of those dreams. So since I had been so aware that I was dreaming on a regular basis, it brought my dream memory more towards the front. I call it the dream memory. It's just your memory that you're aware of your dreams. A lot of people don't think they have dreams, but it's not, it's just because they're not aware of them. So once I found out about the lucid dreaming and the out of body experiences as an adult, I wanted to have an out of body experience, but I tried a couple of different techniques that were just lay in bed and do this, and I would always fall asleep. Didn't work for me. So I found out about lucid dreaming and become aware you're in the dream. And you can use that as a gateway in order to go in the astral. So I thought, okay, well, first I have to realize that I'm dreaming. It's what I have to figure out first. So one of the exercises I read about, it says, ask yourself many times during the day, are you dreaming? And then look at a solid object like a car or a chair, and then turn away and look at it again. Now, if that object hadn't changed, then you know you weren't dreaming. But in the dream state, if you turn away from something and look again, everything moves so fast that will have changed. But the real key in this exercise is questioning your reality. So you're asking, you're stopping, you're lucid in the moment, and you're asking yourself, are you dreaming or you're not? You're proving it to yourself through the visual, and then you move on. Well, this is long before cell phones, so I was setting my watch for every couple hours. And next thing I know, I'm doing it like probably 30 times a day. It's just automatically, I'm just doing it. Am I dreaming? No, no. Okay, so I move on. It takes less than a few seconds to do that exercise, so you can do it constantly. So about every night before I go to bed, I got to remember my dreams. I write my dreams down, and I told myself I want to, wake up in my dream. And I kept trying and trying, and it took me about 11 months until finally I was successful in becoming lucid within a dream. I was in a dream, and something caught my attention that wasn't right in the dream, and that's what brought my lucidity or my awareness to the front of the dream. So now I'm in a dream and I'm fully aware and in control of the dream. At that point, I can end the dream. I can just open my eyes or control the dream or do whatever I want because I'm in that situation where now I'm in control. So that's what lucidity is within a dream. So what I did once I was in that situation, I was lucid within a dream. I thought to myself, I want to have an out of body experience. That's what I was told that would get me out of the dream, and it did. It pulled me out of the dream and into the side. It was basically on the side of my house, about maybe 10 foot off the ground, and I was floating above there, and I was in what you would call the spirit body or the astral body. And so that lucid dream was my gateway into the astral. That's the simple term to put it. So at that point, I'm in the astral, and you're in two places simultaneously. I knew that I was in bed sleeping. I could feel myself, my body in the bed. And then I could also feel myself outside. It was in December, so it was cold. I wasn't cold, but I felt the cool air. And I knew that I was in two places simultaneously. Okay. So what I first started doing is, okay, how's my vision? It's almost 360 degrees. You can see almost completely around you. How do you feel? You feel as if you're part of, just part of the environment is the way I would put it. And I could see much clearer. I could see farther, and I could see much larger from a much larger perspective instead of this normal peripheral vision. It's all the way around. And so I started making, small thoughts on what was going on and how would I compare it and that sort of thing. And one thing I really noticed too is I didn't have any reference of time. Time really wasn't there. And what I saw physically, now this is using your third eye, obviously not using your regular eyes, it looked the same. The environment looked the same. So basically what the astral or the spirit level is if Earth is this level, the spirit level is just an overlayment of it. There can be differences in there, but from my perspective at that point, there wasn't any differences. It looked exactly the same, but it had a different feel to it.
Hmm.
Okay. After that experience was over, which I would, I don't know how many minutes it was because there's no reference there. Then I was returned back to my body, and then I was awake just like normal. There was no ill effects because there's not going to be, you go there at night in your dreams, you just don't know it. You don't remember it. So it's not like it's going to put you in harm's way. That's just not the way things work like that. So that's what lucid dreaming is, and astral projection, how that happens. And I used astral projection in my connection into astral projection was a different way. Some people go from the body and then the spirit lifts up and they make a separation and then they stand up and then they move out. So there's different ways of doing it. This was my particular way of doing making the connection.
Okay. Well, this is great. All right. This is really fascinating. So, Mike, while you were talking about the difference between that lucid dreaming and then leaving your body and having that out of body experience, there is no difference to me in what you described as hundreds of people who have had NDEs have described,
Right.
where recently had somebody who I interviewed, Reverend Bill McDonald, who was in a surgery, and he left and had an out of body experience. And when he would stop, he could feel them moving around in his heart during the surgery, but then he would be back where his consciousness was projected in another place. So it's so similar. And then, of course, the absence of time. So the other question I want to ask you about that is because there's one other very discernible effect that people who have NDEs have, and that's in the way that they feel, where they describe themselves as being in this state of love and bliss, and they can feel like this overpowering love that they've never experienced on earth before. Did you have anything like that connected to your OBE with a feeling?
No, not really. I mean, the feeling that I had during that one time was, I was obviously ecstatic that I achieved that state. I was kind of in wonderment. I'd been there as a child, but this is the first time I've had a controlled out of body experience. So for me, it was just I reached the pinnacle. At the
Yeah.
time, that's what I'd worked so hard towards, and then I was able to do it. I was able to actually successfully do it. That's what I felt.
Yeah, I could imagine. All right, let's go back before we go forward into the astral projection and the differences with that. I want to talk a little bit about this dreaming. I think it's so fascinating that for 3 years you kept a dream log, and not only would you write in it, but you would go back to it. And you said you were looking to learn things from that journal, to glean information about it, about those experiences. Can you share maybe some of the ones that made the biggest impression on you about what you learned by rereading your dreams?
I'll tell you, I was highly disappointed because
Hmm.
I'd been so diligent uh, about documenting my dreams, the thoughts I had during the dreams, and you know, very detailed about colors and that sort of thing. I always thought there would be something that I could use to kind of connect with, or utilize, maybe thinking things that happened in the future, or that. But what I experienced myself was a lot of the dreams I had at times were about work related and about things in my life. And I never really once can I say, and this is probably 15 years of keeping dream logs, that I could say that there was anything that I would consider just beneficial. I
Hmm.
mean, so I came to the conclusion after a long period of time of testing them and then studying lucid dreaming, studying dreams themselves, is the dreams are a projection. Dreams are the play that is played to us at night. And a lot of times, what it'll do is it programs you for certain thought processes. It programs you for certain ways of life. It sets you up for sometimes disappointment, and I'll get into that. People have fearful dreams. There's a lot of things that dreams do. But once you become more aware of what the dreams are happening in your life, I believe the less you are affected by it. There's a lot of things that happen to us in life that we can't really explain. But the more you study it, the more that you get a grasp on what's going on here. And as I got deeper into the dreams and deeper into the study and the control, a lot of things just fell apart. Because I would say it's like a dream is an illusion. And there's very thin wires holding that illusion together. And if at any point you become lucid and in control of your dreams, it falls apart like paper mache in water. So there's a lot of things that happen in our lives that we take at face value, but we don't really put a lot of thought or study into it. One thing I do want to say relating to the body and the spirit. So we have a physical body on the physical plane. We have a spirit body on the astral plane. And then we have a soul, which is on the mental planes. Okay. All three of those bodies are connected by what some people call cords or wires or whatever they are. They're non-physical connections. So what we have is, what happens is, so if you want to have a conscious out-of-body experience, your consciousness, which is no mass, it's just energy, it's the you, your consciousness has to go from your physical body through that cord into your spirit body. Once your consciousness resides in that spirit body, then you can, at that point, you can move that spirit body around, but the physical body is no longer active because you're not residing in it. Now, if you go from the spirit to the soul, then the spirit and the physical body are no longer active. Then you're actively in the soul. So our essence, which is our conscious energy, has to reside within one of those bodies at a time in order to move them, in order to make them alive, because we are what powers them. Like we are the engine or we're the driver, and we have to be in either one of those vehicles in order for those vehicles to be able to move or function. So that's the way we can look at it. We have to consciously get ourselves or unconsciously get ourselves to move in between those in order for us to be. Now, since all those bodies are connected, they're all on different levels, different frequencies, like radio, like a radio station would be 97, and then one could be 99, and one could be 102. All of them are on different frequencies. They're all in the same place, in the same space. They're just in different frequencies.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm really glad you explained that. That's probably really helpful for a lot of people. I do want to say two things about the dream part. Number one, many, many years ago, I worked with a woman who had very premonition type of dreams. And she had all of this evidence about these different dreams. She would dream about things in the future. And she dreamed of a plane crash. She saw the exact plane, the airline it was in. She saw the numbers. And before it happened, she registered it. There was a place where people can register these dream premonitions that they have. And hers was documented and recorded. And then the exact plane, the airline, the number, the date, like she had it all and she saw it. So she connected to something. So I know that for you, your dreams didn't show anything, but I do know people who have had very cool dream experiences. So I don't want people watching to give up and think that the dreams are useless for everybody.
Right. Well, what I didn't say to take into consideration is dreams and premonitions can work within each other. I mean, if you obviously are making a connection, what's happening is when you go to sleep, you go through different levels, whether it's alpha, beta, theta, whatever.
Gamma,
you go
right.
through these different levels, hypnagogic state. There's all these different states we go through. Now, some people could basically think they're in a dream or whatever, but they could be in another state very near a dream state, or within that state, they're making those connections. I'm not saying that can't be done, but generally what I found is through over and over experiences in the dream state, I did not find anything in that bubble, that dream state bubble. I didn't say that it can't happen outside of that bubble or you can't make connections within that bubble. I'm just saying what I found about the dream state um, is basically not helpful for me, other
Okay.
than the fact of using it as a gateway into the astral. That's what it, that's the use for me in my own personal opinion. But the thing is, we look at all there's so many different states you can't even classify all of them because we go through them during the day and we go through them during the night as well. But what I wanted to get into saying is, so what I said, we've got this three body system, and that three body system is overseen by what I would call the subconsciousness. The subconsciousness oversees the system that we're in. And we call it the subconsciousness, thinking, okay, well, it is part of each one of us, but it's also part of the system that surrounds us, part of the system that oversees the astral or the spirit world or whatever different levels that we see, because we're in a three-dimensional physical system surrounded by non-physical systems. And so my experiences didn't focus, my initial focus was on the astral. That's where I wanted to go. That's where I went. But I was sidetracked because I kept going after the lucid dreaming. You know, after I was successful, I said, okay, well, I'll just keep doing this lucid dreaming and I should be able to get better as I go. After the next time that I had a lucid dream, before I could even tell myself I wanted to go out of body, I was pulled back into my bed with my eyes closed. But this time, with my eyes closed, I saw this connection, this large, when your eyes are closed, you obviously have a real wide peripheral vision. It's just, so I was seeing this large oval and it looked like a city by the water, but it didn't look like buildings that I've seen before. And I could tell that it was live because the water moving around and I could hear sounds. It was almost like a camera feed. So there was a border around it with some writing that I didn't recognize. And so I'm just looking at it with my eyes closed. Obviously, it was my third eye, but I was completely awake. I could move my fingers and toes, you know. And I'm just trying to figure out what it was. It lasted about 30 seconds and then it just pixelated and disappeared. I I learned over time that was a portal. What it was is a connection. As I got pulled out of the dream state, I went into a state called the hypnagogic state. Once I was in that hypnagogic state, that's where the connection was. I didn't supply the connection. The connection was supplied from outside. So I got to experience it. Eventually, I started having these pretty often. Every time I would become lucid within a dream, I would just be pulled out of my dream and I would see that. And eventually, that oval image became my full peripheral, almost 360-degree view. And I was seeing places that weren't here on Earth. I was seeing places that were here on Earth potentially. I was seeing some people. I was seeing different beings. They would just show. It would just like a movie screen. Here I am. I'm seeing it, and like I said, eventually I realized they were portals. I was actually told they were portals, but um, I've been having those for over 35 years. But at times, I was going through the process of seeing through the eyes of other people, other beings. I didn't know what it was until I had so many different experiences. It's like I didn't have one, I didn't have 10, I had hundreds and hundreds of them over a period of about 35 years is how long I've been having them. So, and these are maybe a couple a week, maybe a couple a month, maybe quite a few a month, maybe a little bit less the next month. But I just had them all the time, and there's no description of what they were. I would just see them and try to figure it out as I go. Then about I don't know, 15 years ago, I thought to myself, well, instead of waiting at night to try to figure out, you know, if it's going to happen or not, I can kind of try to maybe control the connections. Because I realized I used to do a long drive to work and a long drive home every day. And I'm sitting in traffic and you start to really space out. You know, it was just like not paying attention. And then I noticed there was something going on, but I couldn't recall what that whole situation was. So I started investigating what was going on, and I discovered that when you have a daydream, it's just like a dream. You're looking at this movie screen, and you're kind of working within that whole production. And then behind it back here is your consciousness watching. Well, what's happening is when you're in the daydream state, your subconscious crosses over the veil and goes into alternate realities, different dimensions where you're either there in part of yourself or you're participating. Well, it goes by there. And so what happened was I thought, well, you know, why can't I do that? Why can't I? So it took me about maybe, I don't know, 6 or 8 months to be able to cross over that veil to see what was going on. But then every time I returned, it was erased like a hard drive through a magnetic field. So I kept trying and trying. And then finally I realized that I could do that. I could consciously go there. Because what happens is when you go into a daydream, so if you're like kind of just, you know, riding your bike on a, you know, you're thinking you're riding your bike on a trail or something like that. And from the time that you're physically aware until the time that you feel like you're there, there's a drop off. So what happens is your consciousness drops down a level. And when it happens, your eyes close and you enter a different state. And this is called the hypnagogic state. It's just right near the waking level. I realize you enter the hypnagogic state, and the key is to stay and remain lucid. And once you're lucid within that state, then you can utilize that power, that state, to figure out what's happening. So I've basically followed the subconscious into these situations where there's different alternate realities and different dimensions. And what we do is it's called a portal connection. Once you enter that state, it's a portal, and it allows us to access different dimensions. A portal is nothing more than a doorway that connects one or more frequency together. So all you're doing is just making a connection between, you know, and say, if you're normally here, and it allows you to make that connection over here, when normally you know, there's nothing there. So that's what we're doing. So I've spent years and countless hours, hundreds of hours, following behind this and investigating it, so that I could first of all duplicate everything, and then I could share that with other people so that they could duplicate the same process.
Wow. What I know that this is going to be a guesstimate for you, but how many of these journeys over this 35-year period through these different portals and dimensions, how many experiences do you think you've had?
When the nightly portals and then what I call the glimpse state, which is the daily hypnagogic state, I don't know, probably, I don't know, 600 or 700, probably, something like that. It's just so many years worth of it, and I do it. If I do it, the thing is with these connections, the daily connections, I might be able to do 6 in a few minutes, 6 different connections. What happens is you go there, you have an experience. They don't usually last a lot. Well, I can't say they'd last a long time because I don't know what the time frame is, but I can do 5 or 6 in no time. And it seems like, wow, this is a real experience, but there's no time frame there. And that's one of the things that you don't really realize until you've had it. It's just that there's nothing that you can compare, because there's no time and space. When there's non-physical, there isn't any time or space, so there's no reference point to there. And so it's a much different situation. I mean, the astral is one thing, But these portal connections where we go into alternate realities or different dimensions, there's absolutely there's no comparison to anything else. So I can't say, oh, it's like just like this.
Yeah, that's like the NDEs. Well, I'm curious because if you, everybody who's watching knows what it's like to be in the earth body having the earth experience. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say everybody watching has had at least one dream in their life. And the
Right.
dream never feels as real as the waking state. But when I talk to people who've had NDEs, they often describe that out of body experience as being more vivid, more real than anything that they've ever had in a dream or in a experience in the earth body. And usually most of them say it's like it happened yesterday, where, you know, the dreams, you had to write them down, you had to have a word to jog your memory, and you had to go back and remember the dream. But for NDEs, when they're on the other side, those memories are so vivid and real that they're able to access them or access them and bring them back in as if they were happening right now and they're reliving them. So will you explain the difference in these out of body experiences in that context so people can understand?
Well, the out of body experience, you're residing within a spirit body. Okay. So when you're in that, you still have your feelings and emotions and stuff because it's still tied to a body. When I have the portal experiences or the glimpses, you're not tying to a body.
Okay, more like
Your
NDE.
your
Yep.
connection would be to nobody. There would be it's a conscious connection, and there's no feelings, no emotions, no physical baggage, no wandering thoughts, no anything. Okay, so what happens is we're here on Earth, okay? We're very dependent beings. We need food, we need water, we need shelter, we need clothing, we need heat, we need cooling, we need transportation, we need shoes. I mean, million things we need here. Okay. When you make a conscious connection, you don't need anything. There is no need for anything. The only thing you have is the present and right now. That's what you have. There is no concern for anything outside of that because you are you. You are everything you need. If you need something, then you are the one provides it. So when we're making it, now I tell people a lot of times, I mean, I've been on the astral area and I've been in the dream state and I've been in the lucid and I've been on all that. And when you compare to an actual a non-physical conscious connection, it's night and day because we're taught as a physical being that we need to be dependent. We're programmed to be dependent when in reality, we are independent. We don't need anything else. And that's the way our life should be. But we've been programmed that no matter what body we're in, we have limitations and we have to follow these programmed rules when that's not what we really are. When you're born, you have to learn how to walk, you have to learn how to talk, you have to learn how to do all these different things. But guess what? When you go in the non-physical, you don't need to learn how to use telepathy. You don't need to learn how to use your third eye. You don't need to learn how to move because those are all natural. This is not natural. This is unnatural here. And I know, a lot of people say, well, somebody has an NDE, there's 500 people that had an NDE. Let me tell you one thing. This is what it started out with me when I was a child. And as a child, I didn't have any preconceived notions about how anything worked. Only thing I knew is you could be a kid, you go out and play, you do your things. That's all it was. But I was plagued with a lot of nightmarish situations. I was plagued in the out of body and lucid state at night from all these, I would say, beasts or whatever that were attacking me. That's why when I was a kid, I remember a lot of that kind of stuff, And then when I got older, I was really intrigued with the out of body. But it's just so what happened was as I started going into that, then these nightmarish figures came back and they said, oh, well, you're on the low level of the astral. There's no such thing as the lower levels of the astral. The lower levels of the astral were originally developed. If you're laying on your back, that's level 1. Getting upright in your spirit body is level 2. Movements, level 3. Those are the lower levels of the astral. That's the fact of the matter. That was documented decades and hundreds of years ago. So I started seeing these things coming back into my dreams. And I was pulled out, utilizing the portal, I was pulled out of these dream scenarios. And I finally figured out that these dark images were there. And what they do is they're there to manipulate you into being fearful. Why would you be fearful? Why would anybody need to be fearful? Because you emit energy, different levels of energy, your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions. We all elicit and we expel energy. And when we do that, the ones around us, that the dark beings, that I call them the dark beings only because they don't have light. They feed off of our light. So they utilize our light. So once I realized what was going on and the fact that what they were doing, then I figured how to control my energy. Why I don't need to give my energy away. That's not what I do. So I started holding it back and not giving them what they want. And then eventually they left me alone. So what we're doing is we're in a situation where we're dependent. Why are we dependent? Because we need to be dependent on the beings that need us. That's the whole purpose behind our situation here. I call Earth a prison. I call the astral a prison yard. Why would I call that a prison yard? Because let me ask you this. In all the years, in all the decades and centuries that we've heard about spirit guides and good spirits and everything, when once have they helped us here? Where's the free energy? How can we have 460,000 missing children just in the United States every year? I would think that if the spirit guides and all the spirits would be so good that we wouldn't have any missing children, or they would be helping us find them all the time. There's a lot of things in life that we are presented with, and we tend to just gloss over it because, oh, well, they said it was okay, or they said it wasn't really this way. But once you start thinking about what's really happening around you, then you have to weigh the factors. And I've been going through this process and seeing what's happening in these other what we call worlds and other levels. And never once has any one of them said, well, hey, let's help you make Earth a better place. Why wouldn't that be? I mean, well, we don't want to mess up your Earth or whatever. You have to look at things the way they really are. And the majority of people are under the understanding that the spirit world is going to be this great thing. Well, if you wanted people to fall for the same old story, wouldn't you make it look good? And wouldn't you popularize it? Of course you would. It doesn't make any money for me to talk bad about something that would be good. What would it be good for me? It wouldn't be good for me. But what I had to do is I had to take all of my experiences and bring them down to a point and understand what this was really all about. Why was I experiencing this? And I said, well, I wouldn't experience it one time. I wouldn't experience it 10 times, maybe 150, maybe 200 times, maybe 300 times. Maybe I would experience that because once the glossy paint job loses its luster and you get to see below the surface, then you can begin to see what's really happening around you. But when you show up somewhere and they want you to really buy into it, they're going to throw a grandiose party. Grandma will be there, Jesus will be there, everybody will be there, because that's how we sell the place. That's how we sell this love and life or whatever. But yet we're sold on something that's never ever been shown. It's never worked out. They said, well, if you just keep going back to Earth, you're going to make it a better place. Well, tell me when it was that much of a better place. Because everywhere we go, we're becoming sabotaged. We're becoming manipulated. There's in the illusion of life. They tell you one thing and they sell you another thing.
This is interesting, Mike. Years ago, I asked my dad a question. My dad watches a ton of news and is always up in the current events. And I asked him if he felt like the majority of people on the earth were good or bad. And he didn't even hesitate. He was like, bad. In my personal experiences, it's quite the opposite. Now, I don't watch any news, so I do protect my energy that way. But I want to just talk about a little bit of a different perspective. So, you did mention that you've called it a soul. And I've had my experiences, and what I'm going to say before we even start this conversation is the more I uncover, I've been on the other side 24 times and had these magnificent experiences, these experiences that are extraordinary that couldn't have made up, couldn't have dreamed up, I couldn't have conceived of. But the more I have had these experiences, the less I understand, the less I know, the more questions I have, because I don't think anybody has all the answers. But from my perspective, and the reason I have this YouTube channel is because I do believe on a soul level that we're magnificently powerful in my experiences of being on the other side and in talking to hundreds of people who have had experiences about being these powerful beings. And on a soul level, what if we're all energy? You've mentioned energy many times. Well, Einstein's theory says energy can't be created nor destroyed. So on a soul level, could we ever be harmed? And you realized when you protected your energy and you brought it in, it couldn't be harmed. It was protected. You were protecting your energy. So, what if we are coming here to veil ourselves, to have an experience of that of which we are not? If you were the source of all things and you had ultimate knowledge, you couldn't play poker with anybody because you would know every single hand that's going to be dealt. And you would never be able to, you would always anticipate everything that's going to happen. So, what if you've created a place to come for the joy of the experience? And I mean joy in every way, because even the things that we label as bad, missing children, I can think of an example in the 80s where a man's child went missing and he created the missing person show. I can't remember the name of what it's called. Everybody's probably yelling at me right now, but he helped hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people to find like all of these criminals. I think it was America's Most Wanted, all because his son was taken. And we have these experiences, but on the other side, I have found and spoken to a lot of people that said there is no good, better, best on the other side. There's just experience for the joy of experience. So you don't have to agree with me at all, but I would just love to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, first of all, if somebody asked me, or if anybody asked me if I thought most people are good or bad, I would say they're mostly good. Everybody's,
Oh, awesome.
I
I'm
would
so
say
glad to hear you
it
say that. That
only
makes me
takes
happy.
it only takes a few bad apples in the mix
Yeah,
to ruin it.
I
That's
agree.
exactly so it's not that we are bad. It has nothing
Okay.
to do with it. If you took out all the politics, all the hierarchy in our world, all the corporations, and we all lived, we'd be fine. We'd be just fine without all of the interference that we have. Okay. Given that, so yes, we are all good. But I used to buy into the metaphysical stuff. For years I did. Then as I started going through the process, I started seeing things that were being promoted. This is before the internet, just in books that would be not close to even being true. And I thought, well, this is sensationalism. They're doing this for obviously not views, but they're doing it for book sales and stuff. So I started to weed out a lot of the stuff that was going on and a lot of the things that just weren't true. So, um, but anyways, when we look at the life is like a learning process. Okay, we'll start with that. If life was a learning process, how many times you need to die? How many times you need to suffer from cancer? How many times do your family members need to suffer from cancer? How many times do people in your family need to be raped? How many times do people need to be hung? Or how many times people stabbed or shot? Or how many wars do we need to have? How many people need to die in wars? So what we can look at it as, yeah, you could say, oh, well, then this, and then any argument I can come up with, you can come up with an alternative argument about it. But we have to look at things, we have to piece by piece look at what's going on around us. Okay. So would you probably say that the governments and corporations manipulate us as a as a people,
Of
as a free
course.
people? Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay.
Money.
They do
Yeah.
it because they can. They do it because they want to make money. So we've got this element. Okay. And anytime you have an element, where does the element come from? Because no matter where we, what, if we start off on a new society, start off with the earth and a blank slate, we're always going to have this. They said, well, okay, so if you were making the decision to be here, then you would be able to make the decision to leave. Because there's a lot of people here that are just tired of it. They say, you know what? I just want to leave, but I don't have the ability to leave. But if you really did want to teach yourself something and you got to the point where you wanted to leave, you would allow yourself to leave because you're not going to hold yourself hostage for the sake of supposed learning to drive yourself crazy. You wouldn't do that to yourself. You have a safe word. You would have a safe word because that makes sense. But we're in a situation that doesn't make sense. Nothing computes. And you said earlier between with Einstein and the theory of we can't utilize physical information to describe what happens in the non-physical. The non-physical, how would I? The non-physical is nothingness unless you create something. So when you go into the non-physical, you go into the astral, there's nothing there other than what you see around you. What's that? Then how does something come there? Well, if you show up there, then obviously you're in the spirit body. Well, what happens there? Well, it's called illusion. The system, or what you would say, the devils or the demons or the angels, those are intermixture. Those could be that one piece of energy can be your grandma, it can be Jesus, it can be a devil, it can be an angel, it can be a demon, it can be anything because they portray themselves as you want them to be. And they can portray their own image and they can portray the background so that you see and experience what you want. Why would there be such a vast difference between the astral, supposedly this all great place, and the earth? Why would there be so much difference? Why would this be so like supposedly heaven, and why would this be supposedly hell? Why would it be
Because
like
it's a
that?
game. Because it's a game we play.
What's the game?
Game.
What,
The
what,
game
what,
is, I think the game is to see on the other side. So many people have said, I am love. They're not here. We love things like Mike, you can love the people in your life, your family, saw your cat go by, love the drink you're drinking, chocolate, whatever. We love things. But on the other side, we're in a state of being of love. So why wouldn't we come here to have an experience, to experience that which we are not, and wake up and then for the joy of just the experience. I think this is a simple game, and I'm not trying to take away
right, right.
people's experiences because it feels pretty fucking serious a lot of the time, especially
Oh,
if
it
you're in
is.
pain and have things that happen to you. But I really have seen things to explain it being a game, and so have a lot of other people. But what I'd really love for you to explain to people is some of these experiences that you had in these portals that like blew your mind that you never could have conceived of that you experienced. I'd love to hear some of those.
Some of the ones that I really enjoyed were the two-dimensional worlds. There was
Mm.
absolutely there are living beings that don't have a three-dimensional body, they don't have eyes, they don't have so they're dark. It's a dark world because they don't have any way to actually physically see, but they're I would rate them more like uh, insects in my opinion, but that's not how they look because there's really no way to describe them other than maybe scribbles and doodles because there are things that are out there that are far beyond what we would even interpret as being alive here, but yet they're fully operational and they have a full environment there. Not that we would understand it, but that's how they are. So the two-dimensional worlds are the ones that kind of really I think for me, that's my favorite. The other thing is the alternate realities where I end up in a position as a being. So I come from here, I'm connected with another being. I play a role within that scenario, and I have to figure out what that role is as I'm trying to figure out who I am and who everybody else is around me. So that is one of the most, I don't know, the most challenging portions of my connections because I show up there and I have to figure out the landscape, the beings, what my role is within there, what their role is within there, and then I'm living within that situation. So for me,
Wow.
those are the most either challenging or extraordinary experience that I have. And what I do is I used to really be oohed and awed when I would have these, and now it's more of like, okay, I classify this as this, and I do this, and I try to figure out what's going on around me so that I can get a bearing. And I've never once been to the same place twice.
That was one of
So
the things I was going to ask you. Oh,
there's unlimited, I would
interesting.
say there's unlimited dimensions and there's
Hmm.
unlimited alternate realities. There's really not any number on there. It's just unlimited.
I'm
But what I
curious about
find
what you think
is,
about that because people always say, like, when you have a major point in your life, that you could branch off into another dimension where you're doing that, but then another dimension exists where you didn't do that. And have you have any sense of whether that's true or it works that way?
I don't know about that because generally the alternate realities that I enter are not related to me at all, like to me
Hmm.
in my life or to anybody in my life now. So I can't say, oh yeah, well these people are in my family or whatever. No, it's completely foreign. There's not any correlation that I know of between what this life is and what those lives are. It's
Hmm.
completely separate. So and when you're there, you obviously, unless you were, I guess, in front of a mirror, you wouldn't even know what you look like because you're within that situation within that being. So you don't really know what it is. So when you're in there, you're like just trying to figure out what you're doing, and then you just kind of live it out while you're in that situation. So, but yeah, there's just there there's so much, but the problem is, like you said, the more experience, the more questions you have. And and what I also found is that truth is usually hidden below many layers of lies because the easiest, uh, I would say, the easiest description for something is usually the most convenient
Hmm.
because if you work diligently at something, you'll usually get down to truth, but then it might not be the complete truth that you're looking for because it's usually just going to be a piece of something that gives you a form of the truth, but it doesn't lay out the whole gamut of that experience. So there's so much. And when I talk to people, I say, in order for you to understand for yourself, the only way you're going to really understand it is through your own experiences.
I agree. I
So
really agree with that. Yeah.
you can utilize the information from people to get you to a certain degree, but from there you have to work yourself. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is to put yourself out there. And for the years that I've been doing this, I will say the number one thing that people fall down on is putting forth the effort to do that. They would rather buy in to the comfortable lie than face the harsh truth because people want to remain in their comfort zone. They want to have a belief that feels good for them, whether or not it's true or not, just so they can let somebody else do the work and they'll just go with it because it works for them. And that's the way we shouldn't be. Because if you want to really understand, because I tell people, I go, if you wanted to kidnap people and have them as your slave or whatever, the easiest thing to do is to convince them that that they're here to help themselves, to better themselves. So what you want to do is sell people so that they think they're doing some good for themselves, but they're really under your enslavement. It's like Stockholm syndrome. We have Stockholm syndrome. We believe, because we've been told and programmed our whole life that, yeah, we're here because it's good for us. But there's no way to prove that. There's no way to prove one way or the other, because if it's non-physical, people aren't going to believe you. So this is where we're at. You're in a situation where if you don't look for the answer, you're not going to find it. And if you don't spend the time looking for the answer, you'll never believe it when you find it.
So I said that I feel like that this is a game that we play as a powerful soul to come here for the joy of the experience and then to wake up. I kind of have likened it to, it's like watching popcorn and all of a sudden one pops and it wakes up and it has this joyful experience. If I woke up, I remembered what I was. I remembered I was this powerful soul. I would love to hear what you think the Earth experience is from your perspective.
I've already went through in the beginning was the physical body, the spirit, and the soul. Those are all three containers. Okay. And if you look at it this way, they're all three cars. Okay. They don't work without a driver. We're the driver. So without us, they're useless. We're not the body. We're not the spirit. We're not the soul. We are put into this position. We are trapped into these, I would say, three container or three body prison. The soul's not us, the spirit's not us, and neither is the body. And the subconsciousness is the overseer of the mechanism that keeps us here. So if for some reason, if we got to, why can't we remember anything? Why are we memory wiped? Oh, it's part of the game. How come we can't leave this body and there's a veil around us that we can't get out? Well, that's part of the game. How come I can't really be happy in my life and I keep having all these problems? Well, that's part of the game. How do I get out of the game? Well, that's not part of the game.
Everybody gets out of the game. There's not a single person who's lived to be a million years old.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, how do we get out of the game? How do we
die?
There's no, yeah. So what happens is we have all these different rules, okay? First of all, you're not told the rules, but we have all these different rules. And then if you start to ask questions, then you're not popular. So if you were, like I said, if you were smart enough to figure out your own game, then you'd say, okay, well, I can get out of it. There's none of that. So you would have a safe word, you would have a way out. And there's no way out. I don't care what people say. There isn't a way out of here unless you make a way out of here.
When you make your way out and you escape it, then what happens? What are you? Because you said you weren't soul. What are you when you leave here?
We are conscious energy. We don't have a need for anything. If you want something, then you create something. But if I created something for myself, like a planet or whatever I created, what would be the need for me to trap myself in it? I could just say, okay, well, I'll forget for a day, or whatever. That's not for a day, but I'm just saying, if you wanted to create something for yourself, like a paradise and kind of, you would have a way out. That's
but we anybody. Do. We all die. Everybody dies. So is that not the way out when you die?
No, but if you created something of your own,
mm-hmm.
There is no death. There is no such thing as death. I mean, a physical body, yeah, the physical body can die, but why would you do that?
The consciousness doesn't die. I've talked to
the consciousness. I'm not saying. I'm saying us. The consciousness never dies.
Right.
But why would you need to create suffering and all this other stuff? It's because it's part of the game. So anytime that you come up with a question and you say it's part of the game, well, when is it not part of the game? If it's a game, how can you get out of the game?
Well, I can go a little bit further if you want me to go a little bit deeper into my experience.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. First, I'm going to preface this by saying that this is my personal experience. Like, nobody can take my experience away, just like nobody can take your experience away. And this is not a good, better, best in any level, but my experience is really, really difficult to explain in words. I will say that the last 4 or 5 times that I have been on the other side, I have become what I will describe as source. You can use any word for it: God, consciousness, universe, whatever it is. There is no ego of me, of Laurie, in that place. I'm not thinking about an earth experience. I am this undulation of energy that goes in every direction. And what I would call, from my human state, eternity, which is a time constraint here, that being was in a state of what I would call eternity. And the love of that being is beyond excruciating ecstasy. It's just perfection. There's no knowledge it needs, there's no want it has, there's nothing that it lacks. It is utter perfection. And when I say knowledge, I don't mean knowledge like math and understanding. It's just, it is everything. And the power of this being that I've experienced, and this is going to sound ridiculous, and I hate talking about this because, again, words just fail me. It's like the power of a billion suns, and I can't even fathom in my human mind what a billion is. Not really. And I'm understating it when I say that it's that power. And what I understood in that place was that it was everything. There wasn't anything outside of it. Nothing. Meaning that it was every experience on earth, every experience in every dimension, astral place. It was all it. Pretending to look out of the eyes and be Laurie having this limited human experience, pretending to look out of the eyes of Mike, pretending to look out of the blade of grass and your cat and my dog and the rock. There was nothing it wasn't. And as I'm coming out of that experience to go back and my brain comes online and I get my ego back, I've had two things that I've understood. When I begin to ask before I'm completely out of that energy, what is the earth? I am shown something that is so far away, and I hate using this word, but it was intuited to me. The earth state from that state of being was inconsequential. And the analogy that I've used, and I've talked about this before, is like if I gave you this piece of paper, Mike, and I said, here's a marker and a pair of scissors. Go take this paper and mark it up and do whatever you want to do to create something to entertain yourself with for an hour. That was the simplicity and the purpose of the earth experience, because it was all it. It wasn't something outside. It wasn't a soul outside of it. It was all it. For the joy of waking up. And maybe it's like you play a game of solitaire. Why do we play a game of solitaire over and over again? Because at some point we want to win it all. And to me, the winning would be when everybody wakes up and remembers that it was the source. And you're right. I think when somebody really wakes up to that, if they really wanted to leave, they would. But I believe that the reason that we stay is because we are all one. We're all one thing. So if I can help everybody else understand the power that they are and they wake up to that, it's like another joy of the game of waking up. And you can completely dispute any of it, but I just wanted to share that that was my depth of where I was coming from in this. I could be completely wrong because maybe I'm not even at base level when I've been that being. Maybe there's 100 million above that being, but the power that I experienced is beyond anything I ever could have conceived in my human experience. So I'll let you respond in any way you want to.
Well, that's your personal experience. I mean, there's nothing I can say about it that would be any different than because that's your experience, and that's that is something that you have personally gone through. So there's nothing I can say that would have anything that that it you're what I tell everybody is you've got your experience. Your experience is the only thing that you have that you can base your truth off of.
Yeah.
I tell people when you are going through and you find something that doesn't match what you've been told or programmed, then it's time for you to reevaluate. Okay. So for many decades, I went through a lot of all these things. And then once I was able to meet what I would call the dark ones, um, at the point where I finally met him, I didn't feel any, you know, didn't feel mad or glad or anything. I just had the experience. But I could tell what the whole purpose behind it was. It was an energy exchange. That was the whole purpose. And for me to stand up on behind, up to it was the reason behind it. And that's what I've done. And so I've had a couple experiences in the far past where, you feel kind of joyful and stuff at times. Um, and I'm not saying what you had was under the same uh, preface, but what I'm saying is a lot of times we go through experiences. Now, it's hard to base things on the way we feel because we're always going to be overjoyed and stuff. But I mean, would it have been the same if you had had 60 of them or 100 or 150 or 300? Yeah, it might have been a little bit different. That's the thing. But from my perspective of what we experience on a regular basis is it's the carrot and the stick is what we normally to experience. And then what is happening is some people are going to be uh, are going to respond to better to a situation where it's more joyful and that sort of thing, and other people are going to be to respond to a situation where it's just going to be more of a confrontation based upon what's going on. But what I found is, and over and over and over and over, and trying to get to the bottom of what was going on, that's what I came to because for the most part, the general public is going to see what they want to see in order for them to remain focused on what this is, the game. I mean, and if you didn't want people to be active within it, then obviously the first thing you're going to do is push them away. But if you want people to buy into a system, then the first thing you're going to do is do it because we meet with that illusion every day with the corporations and the governments, the way they the way they push and pull. We're
Yeah.
constantly being pushed and pulled. I go this way, then you go this way. You've got a shiny object over here, a shiny object over here. There's all these things going on so that uh, your perception, your perspective is can't focus. You can't focus on anything, but you got to focus on life because life is what keeps you here. But once you focus deeper on the other side of it and try to see what's going on around you, then you begin to see things that you don't see on a normal basis because you weren't looking, but you
Mm,
have to look in order to find it.
yeah. So I'm curious for you, since you've had so many of these experiences now, what in what way have they made your life here? Because we're still here, right? We're still having the human
Yeah, it's me
experience.
every day. Yeah.
Yeah. What way has it made it either better, worse, agnostic?
I wouldn't say really better or worse. I mean, it's just you go through life. I mean, we all have challenges. We all have to go through the same. You have to pay bills. You have to go to work, or all these things we have to do. So it doesn't really change my physical life. I mean, I obviously put more time and effort into this physical part of it, but other than that, it really hasn't changed my physical life.
Do you think? Do you think you're happier because of what you've uncovered and what you know that you didn't know before?
Sometimes it's a little bit more frustrating, I think, because you kind of see things from a different viewpoint. As your perspective changes, so does your viewpoint on what's going on around you. So it's not like one day it was over here and today it's over here. It's because things change at a slow rate. So you kind of get used to it, and that's how it works as you're going along. But like I said, since we're here every day, you still have to deal with the goings on and all of the challenges that you have on a daily basis. And those challenges are always going to change. So it's not like you can say, well, it was this way before and now it's this way, therefore it's bad. Well, you can't say that because life changes with it. So there's so many variables. You can't just say, oh, it's just this one thing.
I'm curious. This is a question that's come up a lot with the NDE people. And do you think that everything is happening for you or to you?
Uh, just things just happen. I mean, it's like if you make a decision, if you hit your hand with a hammer, well, then obviously you did that. But overall, I mean, things just happen. There are things that happen that are probably, well, what I tell people too is, and some people have a hard time grasping this, but uh, we see a very small percentage of the visual spectrum, and there's a lot of things around
Yeah.
us that we don't see on a regular basis. So
Right.
there are things that could be affecting you and you wouldn't know it.
Mhm.
Therefore, how could you prove it if
Mhm.
you don't have any way of physically seeing it, then you don't know. So therefore, I mean, sometimes you can kind of feel there's something around you, and if something were to occur, then you could probably address that. But there's no way that you could physically prove it because you're trying to prove something that is non-physical with physical means.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to end it with the last question. Then I'm sure that there are people who really would love to connect with you and learn how to do what you're doing. So, what would you say after all of these experiences? What can you say that you know for sure?
Well, I know for sure that we are independent energy. We don't have a need for a body, and we're in a situation where we have to have it. So that's where we're at right now. Um, but it doesn't stop you from looking inward, and and there's so many different levels of consciousness that you can explore, and it's not something that's going to be considered easy for general people. Some people it's going to be easier than others, but if you don't put in the effort and if you don't have the drive to do it, then you're not going to be successful. You already know that. You can't learn how to play guitar in a day, so you're not going to be able to learn to do this in a day. This is no different. If you're willing
Yeah.
to put in the time and put in the effort and put in um, the I don't know, the sweat, even though it's not sweat, but you have to put it in. And when I began this process, it wasn't about thinking, well, how long is this going to take? No, it was about I just did every day, every day, every day. It's just like almost like one track mind at times, but that's almost how you have to kind of be because this isn't something that a lot of people are successful at. If you look at the reality of the situations and how often most people have this, it's very few, even though
Yes,
it
I
becomes more
agree.
popular. But
Yeah.
the problem is it's because you have to apply yourself. And yeah, if you'll meet with a lot more um, failures than you would successes, but you don't look at it that way. You
Yeah.
just count your successes as you go along. And it's not something also that you can always push. You have to just work with it. And if something doesn't work, instead of just keep trying the same thing over and over, mix it up. Try something else. Find something that works for you because we're not all the same and everybody has their own different way of doing things. So if something works for me a certain way, it doesn't guarantee that it's going to work for you that same way.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
put the time in and find something first that you're going to be interested in. If you're not interested in, you won't put the time in.
I agree. So, Mike, I know you have your own YouTube channel. You do videos. So tell everybody where they can find you and how they could work with you.
Um, my YouTube channel is My Dark Explorations. I've also got a couple books on Amazon. My Dark Explorations, A Spiritualist Manifesto, and Leaving the Illusion of Life. And I stay very focused on my comments and information on my channel. So if somebody has a general question or anything, they can either post it as a comment on one of the videos, or my email is on my YouTube channel main page, and they can send me an email from there. And that's generally how a lot of people prefer to contact me.
Would you be open and willing to reply to comments that are on this video when it comes out?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. That's good.
And I want to tell you that I appreciate the fact that you're bringing this information out to people
Yeah.
that generally wouldn't be able to normally. I've been on a few NDE channels, and I know it's not always something that people are always going to be expecting because they kind of hear the stories and they kind of understand. They have their understanding based upon a certain way, and this is going to differ from it. Some people are going to
Yeah.
more openly accept it, and other people are going to more just not really look at it as being beneficial to them. But that's just the way things are, and that's the way people tend to look at things. But I always try to remain open to other suggestions or other ideas because that's somehow the way you learn. So
Yeah. And even on the NDEs, see comments all the time where people don't agree with it. So I always tell people, take in what resonates, like sink into your heart space and see what resonates with you, like in your gut, in your intuition, and take in what does and leave behind what doesn't. And I think that's the best barometer for anything that you're going to try to experience
oh yeah,
and make it real for you.
I
So
agree.
well, Mike, I found this conversation to be completely fascinating. I feel like I learned a lot of things, and I want to tell you how much I admire you for really sticking to something that I know the majority of people would never have stayed with. And I understand like the commitment, 35 years of working on this to explore something and to perfect something in a way that makes it useful for you, I think is super, super cool. And I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your experiences with this audience.
Well, thank you.
And of course, this show is absolutely nothing without all of you who tune in to watch, to listen, and to share these experiences with somebody who needs to hear them. And if you still have questions, you can join me on Wake Up Wednesday live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, everybody, for watching. There's a reason you found this video. These stories awaken something ancient inside us. Hit subscribe and stay on the path with us.